It all started on a perfectly normal Tuesday morning. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and I, Jack Carter, federal prosecutor and self-proclaimed king of sarcasm, was sipping my third cup of coffee while mentally preparing myself for another day of putting bad guys behind bars. Little did I know, my day was about to take a turn for the absurd, thanks to the neighborhood's self-appointed dictator, also known as the Homeowners Association, HOA. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood called Willow Creek, where the grass is always perfectly trimmed, the fences are always white, and the HOA rules are longer than the U.S. Constitution. The HOA, led by a woman named Margaret Maggie Thompson, yes, her name is Maggie, and yes, she's as terrifying as she sounds, is the kind of organization that makes you wonder if they have a secret dungeon where they store people who don't recycle properly. They're obsessed with rules, and I mean obsessed. You can't paint your door a different shade of beige without getting a strongly worded letter. You can't leave your garbage can out for 5 minutes past 8 a.m. without getting fined. And heaven forbid you plant a rose bush without their approval. Apparently, roses are a threat to community aesthetics. So when I moved into Willow Creek 6 months ago, I made a conscious decision. I was not joining the HOA. Call it rebellion, call it common sense, but I just couldn't bring myself to pay $200 a month to a group of people who think they're the fashion police for lawns. Big mistake. Huge. It started with the letters. Oh, the letters. Every week, like clockwork, I'd find one in my mailbox. Dear Mr. Carter, your mailbox is the wrong shade of gray. Dear Mr. Carter, your lawn is 0.3 inches too tall. Dear Mr. Carter, your dog barked for 12 seconds at 3:14 p.m. last Tuesday, and we've calculated the decibel level to be 0.2 over the acceptable limit. I swear, these people have way too much time on their hands. I ignored them, of course. I'm a federal prosecutor. I deal with actual criminals, not people who think dandelions are a federal offense. But then, things escalated. One morning, I woke up to find my trash can spray-painted neon pink with the words HOA rules in bold, black letters. I laughed it off. I mean, who does that? But the next week, my mailbox disappeared. Just gone. In its place was a note. Comply or consequences will follow. I rolled my eyes and bought a new mailbox. It was bright red just to annoy them. And then, the unthinkable happened. It was 6 a.m. on that fateful Tuesday. I was halfway through my coffee when I heard a loud boom from outside. I rushed to the window, expecting to see a meteor or maybe a rogue firework. Instead, I saw my car, my beautiful, shiny, fully paid-off car, engulfed in flames. Flames! Someone had set my car on fire, and standing a safe distance away, watching the chaos with smug satisfaction, was none other than Maggie Thompson herself, holding a gas can and wearing a t-shirt that said, HOA, keeping Willow Creek perfect since 1995. I stormed outside, still in my pajamas, and confronted her. What the hell, Maggie? I yelled, gesturing wildly at the inferno that used to be my car. She didn't even flinch. This is what happens when you don't follow the rules, Mr. Carter, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Consider this a friendly reminder. A friendly reminder? I screeched. You set my car on fire. She shrugged. We prefer to call it community enforcement. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to attend. We're voting on whether to ban bird feeders. They attract too many undesirable elements. And with that, she walked away, leaving me standing there in my slippers, staring at the smoldering remains of my vehicle. I called the police, of course, but guess what? They couldn't do anything. Apparently, burning someone's car isn't a crime if you're the HOA and you have a 50-page rulebook that no one's ever read. The officer who showed up actually said, "Maybe you should just join the HOA, sir." I wanted to scream, but here's the thing about me. I don't back down. Ever. I'm the kind of person who once cross-examined a mob boss so hard he cried. So, as I stood there, watching the fire department hose down what was left of my car, I made a decision. This wasn't just about my car. This was about justice. This was about taking down a group of power-hungry lunatics who thought they were above the law. This was about revenge. I grabbed my phone and texted my best friend and colleague, Sarah. "You're not going to believe what just happened. I'm declaring war on the HOA." Her response was immediate. "Finally, I've been waiting for this day. What's the plan?" I smiled. Oh, I had a plan, and it was going to be glorious. First things first, reconnaissance. Every good revenge story starts with a little espionage, and I was determined to be the James Bond of suburban warfare. I started by doing what any rational, slightly unhinged person would do. I Googled the Willow Creek HOA. Turns out they have a website. Of course they do. It's a masterpiece of beige aesthetics, with headings like Community Guidelines, Monthly Newsletter, and my personal favorite, The Joy of Compliance. I clicked on the About Us page and was greeted by a photo of Maggie Thompson, smiling like she just won the Nobel Prize for lawn care. The caption read, "Our fearless leader, Margaret Thompson, dedicates her life to maintaining Willow Creek's pristine beauty." I gagged a little. Next, I decided to attend an HOA meeting. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Jack, why would you willingly subject yourself to that level of boredom? But hear me out. If I was going to take these people down, I needed to understand their inner workings. Plus, I needed to gather evidence. And by evidence, I mean blackmail material. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a building that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought beige was a personality trait. I walked in wearing a disguise, oversized sunglasses, a floppy hat, and a trench coat I borrowed from Sarah. She said I looked like a deranged private investigator, which I took as a compliment. I sat in the back row, next to a woman who was knitting what appeared to be a sweater for her cat. Maggie Thompson took the stage, holding a microphone like she was about to perform a sold-out concert. "Welcome, neighbors," she began, her voice oozing with fake sincerity. "Tonight, we have a very important agenda. First, we'll discuss the new regulations regarding mailbox height. Then, we'll vote on whether to ban pink flamingos. And finally, we'll address the recent incident involving a certain resident's vehicle." She glanced in my direction, and I gave her my sweetest smile. "Bring it on, Maggie." The meeting was exactly as mind-numbing as you'd expect. There was a 20-minute debate about whether mailboxes should be 42 or 43 inches tall. Then they moved on to the pink flamingo ban. Apparently, someone had put a flock of plastic flamingos in their yard, and it had caused aesthetic distress to several residents. One woman even claimed the flamingos were lowering property values. I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Finally, Maggie brought up the incident. She didn't mention my name, but she didn't have to. "As you all know," she said, "we take the rules very seriously here in Willow Creek. When someone chooses to ignore those rules, it's our duty to enforce them. Sometimes that enforcement may seem extreme, but it's all for the greater good of our community." The room erupted in applause. I wanted to throw my floppy hat at her. After the meeting, I decided to do a little digging. I followed Maggie to her house, a McMansion that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought more columns was always the answer. I crouched behind a bush, classic spy move, and watched as she unlocked her front door. That's when I noticed something strange. A delivery truck pulling into her driveway. The side of the truck read, "Thompson's Exotic Plants. Rare and beautiful." Exotic plants? Since when was Maggie Thompson in the plant business? I waited until the delivery guys left, then snuck around to the back of the house. Through the window, I saw Maggie unpacking a crate filled with orchids, but not just any orchids. These were huge, vibrant, and looked like they belonged in a rainforest, not suburban Ohio. I snapped a few photos with my phone and made a mental note to look into this later. The next day, I paid a visit to the local library. I spent hours researching Maggie Thompson and the Willow Creek HOA. What I found was shocking. Turns out, Maggie wasn't just a garden variety control freak. She had a criminal record, a long one. Fraud, embezzlement, even a stint in prison for money laundering. And get this, she'd been using the HOA as a front for her illegal activities. The exotic plants business? A cover for smuggling rare and endangered species. The HOA fees? A way to launder money. The woman was a full-blown criminal mastermind, hiding in plain sight. Couldn't believe it. All this time, I thought I was dealing with a bunch of overzealous busybodies. But no, the Willow Creek HOA was a criminal enterprise, and Maggie Thompson was its queenpin. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. I called Sarah and filled her in. "You're not going to believe this," I said. "The HOA is a front for a smuggling ring. Maggie Thompson is basically the Pablo Escobar of lawn care." She laughed. "Only you, Jack. Only you could stumble into something like this. What's the plan?" I grinned. "Oh, I have a plan, and it involves a lot of flamingos." First, I decided to infiltrate the HOA. If I was going to gather enough evidence to bring Maggie and her cronies to justice, I needed to get close to them. So I did the unthinkable. I joined the HOA. Yes, I, Jack Carter, sworn enemy of pointless rules and beige aesthetics, paid the $200 membership fee and signed my soul away to the devil herself. I even attended the next meeting, where I smiled sweetly and pretended to care about the riveting debate on whether bird feeders should be banned. Maggie was thrilled to have me on board. "Welcome to the team, Jack," she said, shaking my hand with the enthusiasm of a used car salesman. "I knew you'd come around. After all, rules are what make us civilized." "Absolutely," I said, forcing a smile. "I can't wait to contribute to the beauty of our community." Over the next few weeks, I played the part of the perfect HOA member. I attended every meeting, nodded along to every ridiculous rule proposal, and even complimented Maggie on her innovative approach to lawn care. She had recently introduced a new regulation requiring all grass to be cut diagonally. I'm not kidding, but while I was busy pretending to care about mailbox height regulations, I was also gathering intel. I started by snooping around Maggie's house. Thanks to my new status as an HOA member, I had the perfect excuse to drop by unannounced. "Just checking on your compliance with the new hedge trimming guidelines," I'd say, clipboard in hand, while secretly snapping photos of her exotic plants operation. I even managed to sneak into her garage one night, where I found crates of rare orchids and a ledger detailing her smuggling activities. Jackpot. But the real breakthrough came when I discovered the HOA's secret vault. Yes, they had a vault. It was hidden in the basement of the community clubhouse, behind a painting of a perfectly manicured lawn. Of course it was. I found it by accident during a late-night inspection of the clubhouse. Inside, I found stacks of cash, gold bars, and wait for it, a collection of rare, illegally imported flamingo statues. Because why not? I documented everything, photos, videos, even a few flamingo selfies for good measure. But I knew I needed more than just evidence. I needed to expose Maggie and the HOA in a way that would humiliate them so thoroughly they'd never recover. And that's when the idea hit me. Flamingos. You see, the HOA had recently banned pink flamingos, citing them as a threat to community aesthetics. But what if, just for one night, the entire neighborhood was overrun with flamingos? It would be chaos. Beautiful, pink, plastic chaos. I enlisted Sarah's help, and together we hatched a plan. We bought every pink flamingo we could find, hundreds of them. Then, under the cover of darkness, we planted them in every yard, on every lawn, even on the roof of the clubhouse. We even put a giant flamingo hat on Maggie's prized lawn gnome. His name is Gerald. Don't ask. The next morning, Willow Creek woke up to a sea of pink. It was glorious. People were confused, amused, and, in Maggie's case, absolutely furious. She stormed out of her house, still in her pajamas, and started ripping flamingos out of the ground. "Who did this?" she screamed, her face turning the same shade of pink as the flamingos. Couldn't resist. I walked over, holding a cup of coffee and wearing my best innocent expression. "Good morning, Maggie," I said. "Lovely day, isn't it? I see the flamingos are back." She glared at me. "This is your doing, isn't it?" I shrugged. "Who, me? I'm just a law-abiding HOA member, following the rules. Speaking of which, did you know that flamingos are actually a symbol of community spirit? Maybe we should reconsider the ban." She didn't find that funny. "This is an outrage. I'll have you kicked out of the HOA for this." I smiled sweetly. "Oh, Maggie, you can try. But before you do, maybe you should take a look at this." I handed her a folder filled with photos of her smuggling operation, her secret vault, and her collection of illegal flamingo statues. Her face went from pink to white in about 2 seconds. What is this?" she stammered. "Evidence," I said. "Enough to put you away for a very long time. But here's the thing. I'm feeling generous. So I'll give you a choice. You can either turn yourself in, or I can release these photos to the entire neighborhood. Imagine what they'll think when they find out their beloved HOA president is a criminal." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Finally, she muttered, "You'll regret this." I leaned in closer. "No, Maggie, you'll regret messing with me." The morning after the Great Flamingo Uprising, Willow Creek was in chaos, beautiful pink plastic chaos. The neighborhood looked like a flamingo-themed amusement park, and the residents were loving it. Kids were taking selfies with the flamingos, dogs were barking at them, and one guy even set up a tiki bar in his yard, complete with a flamingo-shaped piñata. It was glorious, but for Maggie Thompson, it was a nightmare. By 9 a.m., the HOA hotline was flooded with calls. People were demanding answers, and Maggie was losing her mind. She tried to hold an emergency meeting, but no one showed up. Why would they? They were too busy enjoying the flamingo apocalypse. Meanwhile, I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee and watching the chaos unfold. It was like my own personal Netflix series, and I had front row seats. But the fun was just beginning. Remember that folder of evidence I gave Maggie? Well, she didn't turn herself in. Big surprise. So, I did what any self-respecting federal prosecutor would do. I called the FBI. Within hours, a team of agents descended on Willow Creek, led by my old friend and colleague, Agent Mike Ramirez. He's the kind of guy who looks like he belongs in an action movie, complete with aviator sunglasses and a leather jacket. I may or may not have had a crush on him in law school. "Jack," Mike said, giving me a nod as he stepped out of his car. "You always know how to make things interesting." "Just doing my part to keep the world safe from rogue HOAs," I replied, grinning. The agents raided Maggie's house, the clubhouse, and even Gerald the lawn gnome. Turns out, Gerald was hollow and filled with cash. Who knew? They found the secret vault, the illegal orchids, and enough evidence to put Maggie away for a very long time. As they led her out in handcuffs, she glared at me and muttered, "This isn't over, Carter." I waved. "Bye, Maggie. Don't drop the soap." The neighborhood erupted in cheers. People came out of their houses to applaud the FBI and, more importantly, to thank me. One woman even handed me a bouquet of flamingo-shaped cookies. "You're a hero," she said. "Those flamingos brought us all together." I smiled, just doing my job. But the best part? The HOA was disbanded. Without Maggie at the helm, the organization collapsed like a house of cards. The residents voted to dissolve it, and in its place, they formed a new group called the Willow Creek Flamingo Society. Their mission? To promote community spirit, creativity, and, of course, flamingos. I was named honorary president, but I declined. I had bigger fish to fry, like figuring out what to do with my new car. Yes, my car. Remember the one Maggie burned to a crisp? Well, the neighborhood pitched in and bought me a new one. It's bright pink, with a flamingo decal on the hood and a license plate that says HOAH 8R. I love it. As for Maggie, she's currently serving a 20-year sentence in a federal prison. Rumor has it, she started a prison gardening club. They're not allowed to have flamingos, though. Apparently, they're a security risk. And there you have it, folks, the story of how I took down a corrupt HOA and brought a little chaos to Willow Creek. If you enjoyed this tale of suburban revenge, do me a favor. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more stories of justice, humor, and the occasional flamingo uprising. Because let's face it, life's too short to live in a world without a little pink plastic chaos. Until next time, stay rebellious, stay fabulous, and always remember, if your HOA tries to mess with you, just bring in the flamingos. They'll never see it coming.